At first look, you might see students who are actively engaged in their class, taking notes and ready to go. However, take a closer look. Look at the screens. You'll see a picture of a baby, Facebook, YouTube, and overall just a distracted classroom. There was a rather unofficial study that was conducted at the University of Michigan. Graduate student Meg Veach sat in the back of her classroom and just took note of what students were doing on their laptops during class. Here's a list. Some of my favorites include looking at pictures of sliced bread, photoshopping Trump onto Muppets, and drawing a tree. This has been a really divisive issue among educators, and it brings up the question, is technology a distraction or a tool? So let's look at the distraction side of the argument. In a study performed by Bowman, Levine, Waite, and Gendron in 2010, researchers had a group of students receive a number of instant messages before and while reading a passage, and then compare them to a group that focused solely on the reading alone. They found that there is no difference in the test performance of the groups, but that the groups that received the IMs took longer to complete the task. This has led researchers to believe that multitasking, while it may not impact performance, it does mean that tasks take longer. Another study conducted in 2013 by Kuzenkoff and Teitsworth found that students who used their mobile phones during a video lecture scored 13 points lower than students who did not have access to their phones. And to top it off, these students took really poor quality notes. And the issues don't stop there. In a study conducted by Sana, Weston, and Sapita in 2013, they found that even sitting next to somebody who is multitasking can affect your performance. But on the other side of the spectrum, technology can be a tool. In an article by Mark Prensky in 2001, he notes that today's learners are bored by traditional methods of lecture and recall, and they really need engagement to stay connected to the material. There's a study done by Gladwell in 2002 where children were placed in a room with a bunch of toys and asked to watch Sesame Street. They were then tested to see how much of the show they actually remembered. And they found that these children retained just as much, if not more, than the students who just watched the show alone. And integrating technology can actually lead to performance increases. Virginia instituted a technology program statewide and the necessary support for it. And they found a statewide increase in standardized test scores. And to top it off, it saves time. Teachers are more efficient, more engaging, and more interactive when they start using technology. It comes back to the idea that we as learners are changing. In the article by Mark Prensky, he believes that this is due to the rise of the digital native. We're the generation that can multitask and in many ways needs to multitask. We're stimulated by video games, social media, web content, text messaging, and YouTube. We need our content to grab our attention and give us instant gratification. He approximated that the digital native spends over 10,000 hours playing video games, sending on average 200,000 emails and IMs, and spends over 20,000 hours watching TV. Does the digital native even exist? A study conducted by Ellen Helsper and Rebecca Enyon in 2009 sought to answer that question. They used the 2007 Oxford Internet Survey conducted by the University of Oxford to find the relationship between devices in a house, or ICT, and the rate of multitasking in Internet self-efficacy. You can see by the graphs here that age does matter. Younger age groups tend not only to have access to more devices, but they also tend to be better at using them. So we know the digital native exists, but does that mean that they can multitask and learn? And more importantly, can the brain really adapt to multitask effectively? Mark Prensky argues that it can. We already know that neuroplasticity exists. Ferrets have had the inputs from their eyes and their hearing nerves switched, and their brains have adapted. Blind participants in one study have the visual areas of their brain light up when they learn Braille. We know that when you learn a second language, it gets stored in a different part of the brain than your primary language. Even intensive reading instruction experiments have caused lasting chemical changes in the brain. Our brains can adapt, they can change. Mark Prensky argues that the digital native's brain has actually adapted to become more multitasking oriented, and that we need multiple stimuli to keep our brains engaged and ultimately learn. So the question then becomes, if the brain is changing, how do we adapt our learning? We know that education needs to change. We need to focus not so much on trying to eliminate technology from the classroom, but rather finding ways to effectively use it. The best way to avoid distraction is to engage students with their devices. Integrate polls, projects, quizzes right on their devices. Have them research topics right in the classroom. Get them to focus their multitasking in a way that is meaningful for their learning. I want to end on one closing point. And this quote from Socrates really says it all. The secret to change is to focus all of your energy not on fighting the old, but on building the new. We shouldn't be spending our time trying to get rid of lectures and tests and paper. We need to build on that foundation and engage with digital natives in a way that closes the digital divide.